another wet wipe? I guess I did. So, you still don't hear nothing? I hear it. Sunday, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Point of View is being brought to you by South University. I am so excited to be sitting across from a sister whom I deeply admire, someone whom I followed long before she was our state attorney, someone who has walked the walk, talked the talk, and has been around to talk about it. She is our state attorney, Monique Worrell, and she's going to be with us this first hour. And we get a chance to ask questions. We get a chance to have chit chat. You got some coffee in that cup or some tea?
I do.
You do? And I got some coffee in mine. So it'll just be coffee between us.
Yeah.
Okay? And we just want to just say welcome, welcome, welcome. First time from Point of View and first time up here at Star 94.5. And thank you. It's Oh Dark 30. And Monique let us know. She's like, how y'all doing this? And so we just say, we just got it. Yeah, because we just want to have that kind of conversation with you. I want you to be relaxed enough to share a little bit about Monique Worrell. And before you ran for this office, what were you doing?
So immediately, first of all, thank you so much, Monica, for having me. And it is super duper early in the morning, but I count it a privilege to be with you. So immediately before I ran for state attorney, I was the chief legal officer at Reform Alliance in New York. It's a nonprofit organization whose focus was on probation and parole reform nationally. And that was with Dan Jones and Meek Mill and
wait a minute, the Meek Mill,
the Meek Mill,
the Meek Mill,
Jay-Z, yes, all of them.
See, we would have never known that. We would have never known that. Yeah.
So I was their chief legal officer and helped to get that project kicked off, and all the while paying attention to what was happening here in Orlando for the state attorney race. Aramis Ayala decided that she wasn't going to run again, and I was looking at the field of candidates, and I knew that there was a voice that was missing. And I decided that instead of talking about it, I would do something about it.
So even before the Reform Project in New York, a little bit more about you, because there's more to the story.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Okay, so how far do you want me to go back? I had been a criminal defense lawyer and law professor. I was a public defender, started my career as a public defender in 1999. And then I went out into private practice. I started my own law firm where I continued to represent individuals who didn't really have money, but had enough money that I could keep the lights on. And I was representing them in criminal cases. And then I got an opportunity to become a professor at University of Florida. And I thought I would do that for 2 years to spice up my resume. I thought that would be a really good opportunity. And then I stayed for 16 years.
Who'd have thought?
And I started there as a professor and ended up as the director of the Criminal Justice Center at the University of Florida College of Law. where I supervised men and women who were going to become public defenders or prosecutors across the state and even some throughout the country.
Is that right? Is that right? Did you do any work at FAMU?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not.
Okay.
Yeah, and interestingly, um, I was calling Aramis to see if she had any connections to FAMU because I wanted to teach at FAMU.
Mhm.
And it was then that she offered me the position of being the director of her uh, conviction integrity unit.
Mhm. And let's talk about that because I think that that was our last conversation.
Yes.
Yes, let's talk about that conviction integrity unit. Now, is that still in existence?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
And that was one of my reasons for running because I knew that no one else who was running had a commitment to conviction integrity in the way that I did. So conviction integrity units, and I didn't know this at the time, were a way inside a prosecutor's office to conduct their own audits, their self audits, their own review of cases because the criminal legal system is run by individuals, people, human beings. So that means that we are fallible, right? We're going to make mistakes. Anytime people are involved, there are going to be mistakes. So the conviction integrity unit is a way to review some of those cases for mistakes. Now, historically, projects like the Innocence Project were the ones to
Yes.
review convictions, and that was largely based on DNA evidence because they weren't in a position to get an entire case and review the facts,
Okay.
right? And that's something we can do internally because it's our case. We have the case. We can review the facts. We can review the evidence. So historically, this was only done externally, but more and more throughout the country, these units were popping up because people decided and understood that who better to review the work of a prosecutor but the prosecutor if they were actually committed to an honest review. So you have some units which are called conviction integrity in name only, meaning they have no intention on actually conducting a review of the conviction, but rather rubber stamping the conviction that had previously been made.
And what's the sense of that?
Well, because you can say to people
That
you have one,
Okay.
and you don't actually have to do anything. And the danger of this is it's pretty real. When I was director of conviction integrity unit, I was reviewing the convictions of individuals who still worked in that office.
Oh, wow.
And they took those convictions very personally.
Sure.
So they did not want to see anyone messing with their work. So that kind of put me at odds with individuals who worked in the office because when I started looking through their stuff, they didn't take very kindly to it. And that can be the danger of having a conviction integrity unit that is in name only. Because if you either worked on some of those convictions or you're friends with people who worked with some of those convictions, you're going to have a loyalty to the individual instead of to the integrity of the conviction.
Okay. All right. So now, with that same type of integrity, you decided to go ahead and put that into the race.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I really want to be very candid this morning, Monique, because we've got a lot on the table. We've got a lot on the table. Last Thursday, we had, I think it was last Thursday, there was a discussion. You guys were over at Kingdom Church, and we had about 50 people here for a conversation with the sheriff. Sheriff Nina was here, along with from the Stono Institute and a family law professor, Jeremy Levitt, and then Rod Love. And the community really was able to chime in and ask a lot of questions. But the interesting thing about that is while you were across town and trying your hardest to get over here, and I mean, and your chief of staff and everybody was just saying she really wants to get over there. But you know what? Two things I want to just say to the public right now. One is that she's one person,
One person.
and she can't be everywhere for everyone. And I understood that. And so I knew that while you were trying, I kept saying to your people, it is okay. It is okay. We'll have a discussion, not knowing it would be this soon.
Right.
That's the first thing. And this is the truth. And then the The second thing is that the community was in an uproar because there were supposed to be three conversations going on in three separate locations. But you know what I found the beauty in that is that they were all on one accord, but going at it from different angles. So why not put everybody together and just let's go down the laundry list. What did you find out? What did you find out? Now let's put it all together and let's tie it up and hand it back to the public, hand it back to Sheriff Nina, hand it back to FHP who did not show up, and hand it back to Orlando Police Department who could not make it at the last minute. There was a shooting and they needed to be there to take care of that. So, no one saw my stress, but I wore it. I wore it internally, and we pulled it off. And I wanted to give kudos to Alfredo from your office. He stopped by, and he really, 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 he and Nina, not it wasn't rough, but it was terse, and you could see that he is that's your boy. He really, really, really cares about the office. He cares about the integrity, and he cares about what's going on right now. So I just wanted to share that with you. And before the morning is over, we'll talk about some of the things that came out of that because I have a couple of pages. But back to you, moving into that through that election. What did that feel like? Because
So
had that been your first election ever
yes,
for public office?
yes. I
Ooh.
never aspired to be a politician.
Ah,
I had no idea what it would take to run a campaign.
yeah.
I had no idea what it would take to get elected. I had been thinking about jumping in the race, and I want to give kudos to Aramis Ayala, my predecessor, because she broke the glass ceiling, right?
She sure did.
Prior to her, no Black person ever thought that they could be the state attorney in the state of Florida in 2020,
20?
right?
Yeah.
2012,
No, that's
2016.
Yeah.
No one thought that they could do it. And because of her, we all started to think differently, right? So I thought I could do it, but then not really, because I was an unknown. I've always been a behind the scenes kind of person.
Yeah.
I'm not, at all of the functions that people who want to run for public office go to. I'm not on all those committees. I'm not involved in all those clubs. So there was some real reservation as to whether or not I could be known enough to run for office. I wasn't super popular. I don't come from money, so I didn't think that I'd have people who were, ready to donate thousands of dollars to me running an election. And then at the time, there was the concern that Judge Perry was going to get in the race. Mm-hmm. And of course, that would make it a lot more difficult because he is so well known and beloved by this community.
Very well respected, yes.
So there were all those factors that I had to take into consideration, and the fact that, again, I never aspired to be a politician. So, nor did I even have a real sense of what it meant to be a politician. But I said, you know what? This conversation is way too important for me to sit it out. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have individuals who see the criminal legal system all the same way. And there isn't going to be a different voice. Mm-hmm. So even if I can't win, I need to join the conversation. Mm-hmm.
And uncover some things, yes. Bring to light some things. Make things come to surface, all right? Move over this way. Come this way.
So her face isn't cut off.
Okay. So we're trying a different type of stream this morning. So you can still see us, but we're doing StreamYard. We want to do things in a bigger, better, brighter way. So we'll still get some questions too. 844-945-2945. If you want to ask State Attorney Monique Worrell any questions, feel free to do so. But these first few minutes are just me and her talking. Okay? So when I say that you brought some things to the surface, you certainly did. and you opened up the conversation in a way that was, it was refreshing. And it caused people to say, let me take her a little more serious. And they did. And they showed up for you.
So, it was interesting. God and I were wrestling with this because I was like, I don't know enough people. I can't be the state attorney. I shouldn't do this. This is going to cost a lot of money. I don't have the money. And God was like, just do it. Just do it.
Everything will fall in place.
Just do it. These people had been in the race long before me. At least two of the people. I had no idea, how it was going to happen. So then I resolved that I was just going to do it. And I want to say that I filed on March 16th of 2020. And on March 20th of 2020, the world shut down from COVID. And the reason that was important was because it leveled the playing field. All of myself and all of my opponents now had to learn to run a campaign in COVID for the first time.
Yeah.
So although they may have had more experience, they may have had, the people in place that needed to be there, we all had to learn how to run a campaign in the middle of COVID.
Right. And you did. And you had to learn how to use social media, and you had to learn how to use social platforms and everything. Yeah. And you made it through that.
Yeah.
Now you're in that office, and you have learned a heck of a lot. You have seen a lot. One of the things that I did ask Sheriff that evening, and I kind of hesitated, but I said, the office before Aramis Ayala, what was the climate like? I mean, were you guys getting along better? Was it an old boys club? And he couldn't really give me a clear answer. And Sheriff, that's no affront to you. That was a rough question, because how do you start responding to a black woman? How do you start responding to a female state attorney? Period.
And
then
I'll tell
it's
you,
a black one.
Yeah, that's a
And
huge
now,
difference.
yeah. And so listen, and then you have a state attorney who, right at the time of a major shooting where a police officer was gone, and one of his, when he was OPT, you announced, there's the death penalty is just off the table. And so there were a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions. So there's been a lot of emotion haggling between that office even prior to you. And it's just built up over time, And so what do you see since you've been there?
I think you really hit it on the head. I think that it's one thing to, break the glass ceiling. It's a whole nother thing to actually be able to work in the glass.
Yeah.
Right?
And try not to get cut.
And try not to get cut. And that is the challenge of that Aramis face, and that's the challenge that I face on a daily basis, because we see it differently. I had someone send me, a very rude and unkind email over the last couple of weeks, and he is someone who used to work in the system, is retired out of the system, and he talks about how all of them used to get along just fine.
I bet, and that was my point.
And
go ahead.
And the reason is because they all saw it the same way. The difference is that I come from a different perspective.
Sure.
1 as a woman, 2 as a black woman, 3 as someone who spent my career as a defense attorney. So I have 3 differing perspectives that I bring to the table. And as much as we talk about diversity, it's really not appreciated. They want people who see it all the same way. They want people who all have the same perspective. And my difference in perspective is what they find so offensive.
And the fact that you stand flat-footed and don't move an inch. And that takes a lot of getting used to. I mean, I used to watch Aramis have to deal in that whole scenario. And now watching you, Monique, and dealing with having to have that back that doesn't bend has got to be really, really tough. That's got to be really tough. So we've shared a little bit about who Monique is. Um, the job of the state attorney. The buck stops with you. All right, let's talk about that. That buck stopping. Again, we are being sponsored by South University. Please give us a call, 844-945-2945. The buck stops with you, sis.
So before I talk about that, I want to say that what we've talked about is just a small part of who Monique is. And I think it's really important for people to understand Monique is a daughter. Monique is a sister.
Monique is a mom.
Monique is a wife and a mother to 3 boys.
3 Black boys who are watching and listening and just feeling all of this. And it penetrates for them.
And those things shape my perspective. The fact that I am a mother of 3 Black boys, when I see things happen, I see my children in those things. And those things shape my perspective that I bring to the table. So yes, as the state attorney, the buck stops with me. They make the arrests. I run the prosecutions. And those are 2 very, very different responsibilities. And I don't think that people understand and appreciate enough how different they are. And I think that's intentional. Lately, we've heard a lot from law enforcement about how many arrests people have versus how many convictions they are. And I have asked them repeatedly, please stop doing that because you are creating a false narrative. You are creating an environment where people believe that arrests should equal convictions. And that has never been true. Prior to me being here, that has never been true. But more now than ever, the emphasis is there. And people are asking, well, they've been arrested so many times. Why have they never been convicted? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, when you're talking about a child, children who are arrested are never convicted in juvenile court. That's not what we call it. We call it an adjudication. Adjudications are not public knowledge. We don't discuss how juvenile cases are resolved. So it is disingenuous, in fact, misleading to say to the public that someone, a child, has been arrested 19 times and has 0 convictions, because if they were handled in juvenile court, those 19 arrests would never result in a conviction.
There you go. That's information for you. That is information. That is information. It's fact.
And what we're seeing a lot now is that the kids, unfortunately, that are perpetrating a lot of the crimes that are happening now are juveniles. They are children. So the arrests that they have are going to be juvenile arrests. We had a case recently with the robbery of the Amazon driver. And again, the sheriff got out there and he said there were 2 individuals involved. And he said between them, they had some 80-something arrests and 0 convictions. Yes, because they were children when they were arrested all those times. And first of all, you should never combine the arrest records of 2 people, but for you wanting to create a particular narrative, right? Because when you say 80-something, that's like, oh my God, 80-something times. But we're talking about 2 different people, right? But also we're talking about children. We're talking about children who were arrested in the juvenile system. And those arrests are never going to result in convictions unless they are direct filed to adult court, like one of those individuals was. One of the individuals in the Amazon robbery had been direct filed when he was 17 years old.
Wow.
He was sentenced to 6 years in prison, came out in November, and was involved in this robbery in January. So that then takes me to another point. Incarceration is not the end all to be all, because people are going to prison every day and they're still coming out and committing new offenses. And we have very few crimes on the record, on the books, that will send someone to prison for the rest of their lives. So stop saying that this person should never have been out on the street. Because when you say that this person should never have been out on the street, you are making a statement that someone is responsible for them being out. And by saying we're doing our job, you're saying it's not us. But the reality is the criminal legal system is going to do what it does. There is a criminal punishment score code from the Florida guidelines that is legislated. It is in the law. It's a mathematical calculation that shouldn't make sense to anyone because I don't know how we move numbers around and decide how long someone should go to prison for. But the point is that it is that score sheet that prosecutors use to determine how long someone goes to prison. So that score sheet includes how many offenses they have had previously, what is the level of the offense that they are currently being charged with, and at the end of all of that, we add up those numbers, we multiply them by a number, and
Divide
then
them and crisscross
right,
them.
exactly,
Okay.
and then it spits out a number that says this is how many months someone goes to prison, and that number is rarely ever for the rest of their life. So the reason the person is out on the street is because the law doesn't accommodate a life sentence for whatever the last offense was that they committed. And we need to talk about that, and we need to educate the community about that and stop shifting blame and saying, well, I did my job, I arrested the individual, as if no one else did their job, when I'm sure everyone involved did their job. The individual made a conscious decision to continue to commit crime. And that's what we need to talk about.
Changes to the system. That sounds like that is where we are right now. Changes to the system, changes to the juvenile justice system, changes to the scorecard, the guidelines, all that you just mentioned. How do we do that?
Through legislation. So earlier this year, I proposed legislation that would tighten up our juvenile justice system because...
How far did that go?
Well, Representative Bracy Davis actually got a bill on it. It hasn't, I don't know that it's been voted on yet, and I don't know if it'll go very far. But the legislature should listen to those of us who are doing the work, because it's easy to sit in Tallahassee and say what the law should be without having any practical information on how that works with the people who are actually doing the work. So we have a juvenile justice system that is wholly inadequate to hold juveniles responsible for the level of violent crime that we are seeing being committed by children. That is a fact. Any prosecutor in any circuit will tell you our juvenile justice system is inadequate. So what should we do? I propose that we give more jurisdiction to the courts, because right now when a juvenile is sentenced, jurisdiction is relinquished to the Department of Juvenile Justice. And essentially, the most serious crime will land them in the Department of Juvenile Justice for 18 to 36 months. That is not sufficient, even for rehabilitation.
Okay.
And the juvenile justice system is supposed to be based in rehabilitation and not punishment. And that's why it's that way. But that is not sufficient, even for rehabilitation, when you have children committing violent crime.
The heinous crimes that they're doing. There is a word coming down from DeSantis that there's a lot. Well, you know what? Even before we get to that, what about the state attorney, the white woman that's in, is she Pinellas, that is beginning to direct file youthful offenders? Who is that?
I don't know.
But you've heard of that.
So direct filing youthful offenders that's not something that's new. Historically, Florida has direct filed more children than most places in the country. Recently, there was a pendulum swing, and when I say recently, I mean within the last 5 years, the law changed and they took away mandatory direct files. So there used to be certain offenses that it was mandatory for that individual, that child, to be direct filed into adult court. So we've had a pendulum swing. They said, we don't want that to be mandatory anymore. We're direct filing too many children, and we're going to make it discretionary for the state attorney to decide. Discretion only belongs to certain people. So when I use my discretion not to direct file, it's a problem because they want me to direct file. However, just like our juvenile justice system is not adequate to deal with the crimes committed by children, our adult prison system was not designed for children. So when we direct file a child and send them into adult court, we have basically written them off and said, there is no chance for your rehabilitation. There is no hope for your rehabilitation. And we've seen that again in the case of the Amazon robbery, the Amazon driver robbery, where that child at 17 was direct filed into adult court and went to prison for 6 years, came out and still committed crime. So then I ask, what is the purpose of doing that? Why are we writing children off and saying we're going to send you to adult court? It's not protecting the public for any long period of time because they're not going to prison unless they commit a homicide. They're not going to prison for decades. They're going for a few years and they're still coming out. So why can't we keep them in juvenile court in programs that are directed around rehabilitation so that we have hopes of changing them into productive citizens?
And so what is the response time to that? So that's the bill, that's the legislative bill that we're trying to get passed?
Yes.
Okay, so what phone calls do we need to make to help that along the way? How about that?
So, certainly you can call your own representatives. You can call your own members of the House, in the Florida House and the Florida Senate. But we are in a very concerning political time. The governor has an extraordinary amount of power and influence over all political offices right now. And people are doing whatever the governor wants them to do.
Okay, so let's put a pin right there. Let's put a pin right there. And let's talk about how to change that. Because there's so much that this one single man, has made himself almost godlike. And in fact, a couple of weeks, maybe a month ago, I had an African American history teacher on to really go through and explain the book bans and the changes that were getting ready to be made to the AP African American history courses. And she encouraged that every time these courses come up, they are going to go back and forth until they are perfected, right? Okay, that may be one thing. But she reached out to me maybe 3 weeks later and said, I just got a call from Tallahassee. And I've been asked to come to Tallahassee to have a conversation. So I don't know, she said that someone heard her have this discussion. I said, well, when you go, I want to go with you. I just want to hear what's really going on, if that could even be a possibility. I just missed an opportunity Wednesday to go up with Equal Ground. I was in so much pain. I hurt my back. My stress goes into my back. And so I was really stressed behind some things and really, really, really in tremendous pain. And I knew that I would not be able to make 4 hours there, 4 hours back, and walking, because I knew I wanted to see some people. I had some things to say, some things to do. I knew I couldn't do it the right way. So I will make it back up there. But I'm saying that to say, I picked up my phone. It's like, let me call representative or text Representative Bracy Davis to see what kind of assistance we can give as a community to make sure that that particular bill, who do we need to call? Petitioning is necessary right now. We've got to get back our rights. One person cannot have that much power. You remember the Malcolm X film when the police said once one of the who was it that was shot, and Malcolm X, and they marched to the hospital and they said the police officer said that's too much power for one man to have. I'm trying to, if you remember that part in the film. Well, that's too much power. And yes, I did say that. I did say that, and I didn't stutter. How did that happen? How did that happen?
So
Can you answer that?
I can't.
There's
I
no
can't.
answer
No,
for that.
I can't answer that. But you're right. It is too much power. We have a system that has checks and balances built into it, and he is overriding all of those. With the suspension of my colleague in Hillsborough County,
Yes.
and all of the other democratically elected positions that he has taken people from, it's not right. It's not right. This is not a dictatorship. It's a democracy. And when the electorate votes and they say, this is who I choose, it's not for the governor to come and start pulling people out of those seats and replacing them with the people that he chooses.
But that's what's happening.
But that is exactly what's happening.
So, all right. What kind of guidelines are we not following? And you said checks and balances. We're not checking off the right boxes because it's not balancing out.
Well, I think right now a lot of people are in fear. I think a lot of people are in fear.
But what could you be in fear of? What's going to happen?
They're in fear of losing their seats.
Okay, I'll lose my seat.
Because not everyone feels that strongly
Yeah.
about whatever it is that they're fighting for. And that's what makes me different.
Yeah, these are the people that we've put into office with our vote.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like they're turning on us. It's not fair, and it's not comfortable to be Black and live in Florida right about now.
That's exactly right.
Its rights are being taken away from us. 844-945-2945, and that's not right. It is not right. Our guest this morning is State Attorney Monique Worrell. Now is your opportunity to ask some of the questions. You've been murmuring in the street. She can hear you. You know how they say, I can hear you. Monique can hear you. Let's have a conversation with our state attorney and find out. I've gone on your Twitter. I've gone and trolled some of the comments, and it's a lot of negativity on your pages. How does that feel? Because people are putting like an X on your back, as if you were the one that pulled the trigger. And they're saying she just explained to you what happens with juvenile offenders, and that there is legislation that need. I tell you, I messed things up this early. Legislation that needs to be changed, and only our legislators can do that. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not the fault of the public. They're listening to what they're being told. And when you have law enforcement go out there and say this happened because the state attorney didn't do her job, well, whoever has the megaphone, gets the people to follow them. So that's why I have had an unprecedented number of press conferences over the last several weeks, because I'm not going to take it laying down. You're not going to disparage the work of the men and women in my office and make something our fault that's not our fault. So let's talk about the Pine Hill shooting. That individual has a juvenile record.
Very lengthy.
It is, but let's talk about even that, because I had to have my staff pull the record because the sheriff got up there and he said he has all of these violent crimes. Well, he had 4 felonies. 4. And I'm not saying that 4 felonies isn't a lot, but compared to some of the records that we see, 4 felonies is not that much. And 3 of those felonies were car burglaries. One of them was a robbery with a firearm. He was not the person in possession of the firearm. So we have to really look into things when we're being told things for the facts. And that's one of the things I've been saying lately, is that facts matter. Because the sheriff painted a record, an image of this individual as though he had been robbing people, at gunpoint repeatedly, that he had been, carjacking people, that he had been, bank robbing. Like, he painted this history that just wasn't accurate. He had 4 felonies, and 3 of them were car burglaries, not carjackings, car burglaries, where he and individuals broke into cars. One of them, he was a passenger in a car that had been stolen. So we need to delve into things and hear all of the facts before we make judgment. His only adult offense, and the only one that happened while I was state attorney, might I add, was a possession of marijuana charge. Now, legislation changed. The governor signed legislation in 2019 that made it impossible for us to determine legal hemp from illegal marijuana. So across the 20 circuits of Florida, they are no longer prosecuting misdemeanor marijuana because they can't get it tested. That's not something that's specific to Monique Worrell in the Ninth Circuit. That is something that is being carried out across the 20 circuits. There are policies, although Andrew Warren, my colleague, was suspended for having policies of non-prosecution. There are other state attorneys who have policies of non-prosecution of misdemeanor marijuana cases. So for the governor and for the senator to come out and say, she did this, she's the reason why this happened, that's a false narrative, and it's just not true. Because even if we prosecuted him for that misdemeanor marijuana possession, he wouldn't have been in jail when this happened. Because misdemeanor marijuana isn't going to keep anyone in jail. First of all, the maximum sentence is a year, and no one's getting the maximum sentence. Even if I asked for it, there's no judge who's going to give someone a year in jail for misdemeanor marijuana.
And let me just add on this. Do you not think that with all of the other crimes that this person had committed, would he have even looked at that? I guess not, because he was a juvenile when those were committed.
Right.
Okay.
Right. He was a juvenile when that was committed. Now, there was another thing that the sheriff brought out. Well, he had a gun in the car, and the state attorney should have prosecuted that case. And he's strategic because he doesn't ever say the state attorney should have, but he'll say something like, it should have been prosecuted.
Okay.
Well, obviously, the state attorney is the one who makes the decision to prosecute or not to prosecute. But he strategically left out the fact that it was the deputy who said they were going to send the gun in the car for DNA analysis. And the deputy never sent the gun for DNA analysis. The deputy never presented a possession of a firearm charge to my office by Mr. Moses or anyone else. So how then should we have prosecuted him for possession of a firearm when the work that was supposed to be done by law enforcement to bring us that case was never done? So we've got to look at the entire picture. We have to look into things and don't just take things at face value because the sheriff said it. Because I'm here to tell you this morning that the sheriff has said a lot of things with the intention of misleading the community.
844-945-2945 now is an opportunity for you to speak with State Attorney for the Ninth Circuit right here, Monique Worrell. We're just clearing some things up. I told her a long time ago, that she could have a platform, and it was very interesting. Monique said something to me, and it didn't hurt. She said, but he, being our governor, is not listening to Black media. It doesn't serve a purpose. That didn't hurt my feelings, because I don't feel like I'm just media. I'm Monica May. And that should make a difference. And the reason I say that is because I can stand just as flat-footed as the next person and speak my piece and not move. So, oh man, we've got to get together and do something about not only what's happening with you, but what's happening throughout the state of Florida. This is some scary times to be Black and to be in Florida.
It really is. And that's the thing, is that if we don't stand for something,
she's going to fall for everything.
we have to stand as a community, as a people. We have to stand. Our ancestors stood so that we could have the right to stand, and we are squandering that right.
So let's talk about that, because I have another question to ask you, and that's about the grand jury. I'm not understanding who makes up a grand jury anywhere. Um, like, could I be on the grand jury?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
So the grand jury is, I think, intentionally mystified. So let me demystify it a little bit.
Because I mean, let me tell you something. Before, and my husband can attest to this, I really, really, really put my heart and soul into coming up with these questions, because I'm researching, and I looked and I looked and I looked and I said, well, heck, I could be on the grand jury.
Yeah. So jury duty is something that I think I came and talked to you about maybe I don't know 7, 8, 9 years ago, right? Of how important jury duty is, because as a Black community, we find all sorts of ways to evade jury duty, right? But then we get mad when things happen and we don't like the outcome. Well, we can't have it both ways. If you want to control the outcome, then you have to take your civic responsibility seriously, and you got to show up. So anyone could be on a grand jury because it goes through jury summons. So you get your jury summons and you show up thinking that you're just going to decide a case for the day, but you end up at the state attorney, either in the state attorney's office or in the courthouse, speaking with state attorneys about being on the grand jury. And that's how it happens. It's through jury duty. So we just recently swore in a new grand jury, and it was individuals who came to the courthouse thinking that they were going to be serving on a jury for the day, and they will be serving on the grand jury for 6 months. Now, they don't stay sequestered for 6 months. They go about their lives, and we call them about once a month to hear cases that need to go before the grand jury. What type of cases go before the grand jury? In Florida, in order for us to charge first-degree murder, it has to go before the grand jury. As a prosecutor, we can charge any other type of crime, but for us to charge first-degree murder, it has to go before the grand jury. The other types of matters that go before the grand jury are cases of public importance. So what we do is anytime we are going to bring charges against a law enforcement officer, we bring it to the grand jury, because we believe that the community should be able to say whether or not they want this case prosecuted, or any other public official for that matter. So we'll bring those cases to the grand jury as well.
844-945-2945. I was that you right. It was a mystery. 6:48 now. I cannot believe either we are capturing the real deal truth that not one person has called us this morning. I cannot believe that.
Well, it's early. They're not up yet.
Listen, then we got to move this to another time, because this is some juicy stuff that we're talking about. The state attorney is with us, and Monique Worrell has worn an X on her back since she got in that office. It has not been easy. What the climate of the other prosecutors there, the other attorneys who are working with you? What's the morale like
It's
now?
hard. I had a conversation with my staff just this past Wednesday, because this was following the Osceola County Sheriff coming out and saying that we're not prosecuting any drug trafficking cases, which was just a flat out lie, right?
The way that you all were?
That we're not. He said that of the 70 some odd cases that he presented for drug trafficking in 2022, that we prosecuted 0, and he made this, whole dog and pony show about it, and he held up his hand and he said 0, and that was just a lie. It was just a lie, and it's again part of this concerted effort to mislead the public into believing that I am not doing my job, so that when something happens, I have to immediately get on the defense. So when I went out to Osceola County to talk to my staff out there, they were upset. They were offended because they had tried several drug trafficking cases last year, right? There were 13 convictions and charges that were entered for drug trafficking in the minimum mandatory or greater, right? And there were 38 of those cases that are still pending. So for him to get up there and say that we're just not prosecuting it, it's just not true. And the people who are doing the work, and this is what I tried to explain to Sheriff Mina, when you come out and you criticize my office, your intention is to criticize me. But I'm not prosecuting these cases. The assistant state attorneys are prosecuting these cases, and you are criticizing their work, and they take it very personally. And in a time where we are having a difficult time recruiting, it is a shame that you would come out and criticize already volatile environment of individuals doing their jobs. So they are the morale is low, and I come out and I defend them as often as I can because they are the ones who are on the front lines every day making difficult decisions. They are processing hundreds of cases. I told the community that last year we processed over 50,000 cases with 130 lawyers. So they are processing hundreds of cases and making difficult decisions about what to do with them, and to attack them by saying they're not doing their jobs. It shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be.
We have a caller on the line. Annette is calling in from Orange County. Good morning, Annette. You're on with the state attorney, Monique Worrell, and this is Point of View on Star 94.5. Hey, Annette. Good morning.
Good morning.
See, I told you, Monique.
Thank you so much for calling in and for saying that. You know, I've heard a lot about this individual who's out there trying to get petitions signed, and I encourage all of you as you come across him to ask him what his platform is that doesn't include me, because everything that he's talking about is about me. He's telling people that people get jaywalking tickets for homicide. He's telling people that I've prosecuted more law enforcement officers than the history of this office. And now he's telling people that I don't have the qualifications. And it's funny because I was talking to someone the other day and talking about how God designed my destiny so that I would have all the qualifications that I needed for this office. And I didn't even know that that's what was happening, right? So I started my career as a public defender. I went on to be a defense attorney. I was a professor while I was practicing law as a defense attorney for 16 years. I became the chief legal officer at a nonprofit organization. I was the director of the conviction integrity division inside the state attorney's office. And I was doing all of those jobs because I was passionate about them. But God designed all of those jobs because he knows that I needed those credentials to stand before the public and say, I am qualified to do this job. And I think it's interesting that someone who's, you know, been an attorney for less time that I taught attorneys how to do what he's doing is out there saying that I don't have the qualifications.
Stop it. Justin, no. Okay.
So everything that happens in my office is my responsibility. Everything. Whether I made the decision myself or not, it is my responsibility. I am responsible for everything that happens. However, I am not the person who makes the decisions regarding individual cases. I have assistant state attorneys who are all lawyers who exercise individual judgment. Now, I've created the culture for what are the things they should be considering when they use their individual judgment. But they make individual decisions on individual cases. And sometimes they make decisions that I might have decided differently if I was looking at the case. But processing 50,000 cases a year, there's no way that I would lay eyes on 50,000 cases. Now, I think what you may be referring to are capital cases. And we have a capital case review panel. And the capital case review panel looks at any case that would be a capital case punishable by life or death. And they review that case to make sure that it should be charged that way. And they review that case to see if the death penalty is applicable. And they review the case to make a determination on whether or not they should recommend the death penalty to me. And once they have done that review, they present me with their recommendations, and I make the final decision as it relates to capital cases.
I would have to ask right now your take on the death penalty.
I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't like the death penalty. I think the death penalty has been used in the same way that many things in this criminal legal system have been used. It's been racially motivated a lot of times. But more importantly than my personal feelings about the death penalty is the fact that here in the state of Florida, more than 30 individuals have been exonerated off of death row. That means that more than 30 times we've gotten it wrong here in the state of Florida. That we have put people on death row who were innocent of the crimes that they've committed, of the crimes they've been accused of committing. And that is a problem because death is the ultimate penalty. And once it is imposed, we can never make it right. So because death penalty is the law in the state of Florida, and I don't have the authority to override the law, I have put safeguards in place by creating this capital case panel so that they review all of the information to ensure that if my office seeks death, that we are not seeking it against the wrong person.
Listen, I've got a caller on the line that has a question for you. Annette, thank you so much, sweetheart. Justin is calling in from Ocala. He's got a question for you. Justin, we're having difficulty with that. Ask your question really quick because the sounds in the background are overwhelming. Okay, pull him back down. His question. Did you understand his question? Let me repeat the question because he's coming before I even had an opportunity to ask, "Are you thinking about running again?" And he come and ask, "Are you gonna run for governor?" Go ahead, Justin. Go with your question. You gonna run for governor?
I am not gonna run for governor for a couple of reasons. One, my passion, my gift, and my area of expertise is criminal law. And I think it's important that we all stay in our lane and we do what we're good at. I am good at this. And I had the opportunity to see it from the other side for a very long time. So I know the things that need to be changed on this side. And I think that it would be a disservice to our community for me to abandon my gift to go try to take on something that is not my gift.
Okay. So with that being said, the next part of my question is, are you going to run again?
I am absolutely going to run again.
You are?
When I ran the first time, I committed to this community that it wasn't for a step to another position, that I was doing this because I believe in this work. And I believe that I have the information regarding the changes that need to be made. And I have the ability to make those changes. So yes, I have launched my campaign this week. I am running for state attorney in 2024.
Okay. All right. There you have it. I don't know if this is the first time you made that announcement, but I'm grateful that she made it right here with us on Star 94.5. I don't know if you want to stay for a little bit, but Congressman, they tell me Maxwell Frost might be on the line for us. I don't know. Um, Whatever it is your
Yeah.
choice is.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So hang out for just a moment. So Congressman, how are you? How are you? How are you? Is he there yet?
Yeah, they're not gonna break.
There he is. Congressman Maxwell Frost, how are you? We're doing well. We're doing well. You know they call him the Barack Obama of his generation.
Is that right? Well, good morning, Congressman.
He said, "Oh, yeah, they have called you